The Economic Survey 2021-22 was tabled in Parliament by the Finance Minister on 31st of January, soon after the President's address to both the Houses of Parliament. Economic Survey is a vital component of all the three stages of UPSC preparation: Prelims, Mains and Interview, because this document gives insight into the economy of the nation, its functioning, lacunae and prospects. It contains the most authoritative and updated source of data on India's economy. For preliminary examination, 8 to 10 questions directly come from Economic Survey every year. The exactness is so striking that even word-by-word matching is present. When it comes to mains exam, current affairs related economic questions and questions related to social developments are mostly asked from this document. The relevant data provided in the Economic Survey can be directly quoted in the GS papers, essay and even in some optionals such as humanities. Good awareness about Economic Survey will definitely help you form quality answers in your mains exam and interview as well. Before going to the details of the Economic Survey 2021-22, let's see some general points about the Economic Survey.
First of all, Economic Survey is an annual document released by the Minister of Finance. It can be called as the official report card of the country's economy and is tabled in Parliament by the Union Finance Minister a day before the presentation of Union Budget. It contains the most authoritative and updated source of data on Indian economy. It's a report card that the government presents on the state of the economy in the past 1 year, the key challenges it anticipates and their possible solutions. This document contains a detailed account of the state of the economy, its prospects and policy changes. It reviews the country's economic development over the past 12 months. It summarizes how the different development projects of the country perform. It highlights the government's policy initiatives. It carries sectoral overview and comments on reform measures needed. The survey's outlook serves as a marker for future policy moves as well. Economic Survey is prepared by the Economic Division of the Department of Economic Affairs of the Finance Ministry under the guidance of the Chief Economic Advisor. Coming to the history of Economic Survey, the first Economic Survey in India was presented in the year 1950-51. Up to 1964, it was presented along with the Union Budget. From 1964 onwards, it has been delinked from the budget. Now, it is presented a day before the Union Budget is presented in the Parliament. Next is about the format of the survey. After Aravind Subramanian took charge as the Chief Economic Advisor of the country, the Economic Survey became a 2-volume report. His successor, K.V. Subramanian, continued the same trend. The first volume generally has chapters on the future course of the economy, which provides a scope for the chief economic advisors to narrate their views. The second volume lists the country's economic developments over the past year. Its principal focus is to explain the immediate economic issues faced by the different sectors with the help of substantial data. It throws light on the major challenges anticipated along with the solutions pursued. However, in departure from the recent years' practice of the survey being published in 2 volumes, the Economic Survey for 2021-22 has been published in a single volume. Now let's see whether it is mandatory to publish the Economic Survey. The Constitution of India neither binds the government to present the Economic Survey, nor is the government obliged to go with its recommendations. It's completely left to the government to decide if it will adopt or reject the suggestions made in the Economic Survey. We can say that Economic Survey is a kind of report card of the country's economy, and it also serves as the vehicle to promote economic reforms. This is the front cover of Economic Survey 2021-22. This year, the survey is prepared by the Principal Economic Advisor and other officials in absence of Chief Economic Advisor. Just days before the presentation of the Economic Survey, the government has appointed economist V. Anantha Nageshwaran as the new Chief Economic Advisor. The central theme of this year's Economic Survey is the agile approach, implemented through India's economic response to the COVID-19 pandemic shock. Next is barbell strategy, safety nets and agile response. The last 2 years have been particularly challenging for policy making around the world with repeated waves from a mutating virus, travel restrictions, supply chain disruptions, and more recently, global inflation. Faced with all this uncertainty, the Government of India opted for a barbell strategy that combined a bouquet of safety nets to cushion the impact on vulnerable sections of society or business, with a flexible policy response, Bayesian updating of information. As explained in last year's economic survey, this is a common strategy used in financial markets to deal with extreme uncertainty by combining two seemingly disparate legs. The iterative leg of this strategy is the same as the agile approach that uses feedback loops and real-time adjustment. The agile approach is a well-established intellectual framework that is increasingly used in fields like project management and technology development. In an uncertain environment, the agile framework responds by assessing outcomes in short iterations and constantly adjusting incrementally. It is important here to distinguish agile from the waterfall framework, which has been the conventional method for framing policy in India and most of the world. The waterfall approach entails a detailed initial assessment of the problem followed by a rigid upfront plan for implementation. This methodology works on the premise that all requirements can be understood at the beginning and therefore pre-commits to a certain path of action. This is the thinking reflected in 5-year economic plans and rigid urban master plans. The flexibility of Agile improves responsiveness and aids evolution, but it does not attempt to predict future outcomes. This is why the other leg of the barbell strategy is also needed. It cushions the unpredictable negative outcomes by providing safety nets. Coming to the state of the economy, the Indian economy is estimated to grow by 9.2% in real terms in 2021-22, as per first advance estimates, subsequent to a contraction of 7.3% in 2020-21. GDP is projected to grow by 8 to 8.5% in real terms in 2022-23. Although the second wave of the pandemic in April to June 2021 was more severe from a health perspective, the economic impact was muted compared to the national lockdown of the previous year. This is evident in these figures. In the second figure, you can see that the GDP and GVA have come out of the pre-pandemic levels. The projection given by the survey is comparable with World Bank and Asian Development Bank's latest forecast of real GDP growth of 8.7% and 7.5% respectively for 2022-23. As per IMF's latest World Economic Outlook projections, India's real GDP is projected to grow at 9% in 2021-22 and 2022-23 and at 7.1% in 2023-24, which would make India the fastest growing major economy in the world for all 3 years. This projection given in the economic survey is based on the assumption that there will be no further debilitating pandemic-related economic disruption. Monsoon will be normal. Orderly withdrawal of global liquidity by major central banks. Oil prices will be in the range of 70 to 75 US$ per barrel and resumption of disrupted global supply chains. Agriculture and allied sectors are expected to grow by 3.9%. Industry by 11.8% and services sector by 8.2% in 2021-22. This table shows the annual growth of gross value added at constant prices. It shows that the agricultural sector was the least impacted by the pandemic-related disruptions. It is estimated to grow to 3.9% in 2021-22 on top of 3.6% and 4.3% respectively in the previous 2 years. This sector now accounts for 18.8% of the gross value added. As shown in these figures, the area sown under Kharif and Rabi crops and the production of wheat and rice has been steadily increasing over the years. On the demand side, consumption is estimated to grow by 7%, gross fixed capital formation by 15%, exports by 16.5% and imports by 29.4% in 2021-22. In this table, we can see that total consumption is estimated to have grown by 7% in 2021-22, with government consumption remaining the biggest contributor in the previous year. Government consumption is estimated to grow by a strong 7.6%, surpassing pre-pandemic levels. Private consumption is also estimated to have improved significantly to recover 97% of corresponding pre-pandemic output level. Macroeconomic stability indicators suggest that the Indian economy is well placed to take on the challenges of 2022-23. A combination of high foreign exchange reserves, sustained foreign direct investment, and rising import earnings will provide an adequate buffer against the possible global liquidity tapering in 2022-23. Now we'll see the impact of pandemic on economy. The economic impact of the second wave was much smaller than that during the lockdown phase in 2020-21, though the health impact was more severe. Government of India's unique response comprised of safety nets to cushion the impact on vulnerable sections of society and the business sector, significant increase in capital expenditure to spur growth, supply-side reforms for a sustained long-term expansion. The government's flexible and multi-layered response is partly based on an agile framework that uses feedback loops and the use of 80 high-frequency indicators in an environment of extreme uncertainty. Next is fiscal developments. The revenue receipts from the central government from April to November 2021 have gone up by 67.2% year-on-year as against an expected growth of 9.6% in the 2021-22 budget estimates over 2020-21 provisional actuals. Gross tax revenue registers a growth of over 50% during April to November 2021 in year-on-year terms. This performance is strong compared to pre-pandemic levels of 2019-20 also. During April to November 2021, capital expenditures has grown by 13.5% with focus on infrastructure-intensive sectors. Here, the first figure shows the direct and indirect tax revenue receipts during the period of April 2019 to November 2021. In the second figure, you can see that during April to November 2021, both fiscal deficit and primary deficit stood at levels much below the corresponding levels in the previous 2 years. Here, you can also see that fiscal deficit of the central government at end November 2021 stood at 46.2% of the budget estimates compared to 135.1% during the same period in 2020-21. Sustained revenue collection and a targeted expenditure policy has contained the fiscal deficit for April to November 2021 at 46.2% of budget estimates. This figure shows the composition of taxes in gross tax revenue in 2021-22 budget estimates. Here you can see that the maximum amount of revenue is contributed by GST, followed by corporation tax and taxes on income other than corporation tax. Next is about the increase in government debt. With enhanced borrowings on account of COVID-19, the central government debt has gone up from 49.1% of GDP in 2019-20 to 59.3% of GDP in 2020-21. But this is expected to follow a declining trajectory with the recovery of the economy. The graph given here shows the trends in general government debt and deficits as a percentage of GDP. Coming to external sector, India's merchandise exports and imports rebounded strongly and surpassed pre-COVID levels during the current financial year. There was a significant pickup in net services, with both receipts and payments crossing the pre-pandemic levels despite weak tourism revenues. Net capital flows were higher at $65.6 billion in the first half of 2021-22 on account of continued inflow of foreign investment, revival in net external commercial borrowings, higher banking capital, and additional special drawing rights allocation. India's external debt rose to $593.1 billion at end September 2021 from $556.8 billion a year earlier. reflecting additional SDR allocation by IMF coupled with higher commercial borrowings. Foreign exchange reserves crossed $600 billion in the first half of 2021-22 and touched $633.6 billion as of December 31, 2021. As of end November 2021, India was the fourth largest forex reserves holder in the world after China, Japan and Switzerland. India has diversified its export destinations in last 25 years, yet more than 40% of India's exports is still accounted by only 7 countries. United States of America remained the top export destination in April to November 2021, followed by United Arab Emirates and China. The impressive performance of India's exports may be attributed to various schemes and initiatives taken by the government to boost exports and to reduce the adverse impact of COVID-19. Some of these schemes are remission of duties and taxes on exported product, developing district as export hub, production linked incentive or PLI scheme, electronic platform for preferential certificate of origin, infusion of capital in Exim Bank, Export Credit Guarantee Corporation of India Limited, Export Promotion Capital Goods Scheme, etc. As the pandemic ebbed, India witnessed revival in domestic demand, resulting in strong import growth. The mechanized imports grew at the rate of 68.9% to $443.8 billion in April to December 2021 over the corresponding period of last year and 21.9% over April to December 2019, crossing the pre-pandemic levels. Among the top 10 countries of import origin, China, United Arab Emirates, United States of America were the top import sources for India in April to November 2021, with China's share reducing to 15.5% from 17.7% in corresponding period a year earlier, reflecting increased diversification of India's import sources. Next is about India's external debt. India's external debt as at end September 2021 estimated at $593.1 billion grew by $22.3 billion, that is 3.9% over the levels as at end June 2021. India's external debt, which crossed the pre-crisis levels as at end March 2021, consolidated further as at end September 2021, aided by revival in NRI deposits and the additional SDR allocation by the IMF. Commercial borrowings and short-term trade credit, on the other hand, which are growth sensitive, still continue to be below the pre-pandemic levels. India's external debt continues to be below what is estimated to be optimal for an emerging market economy, while various external sector vulnerability indicators improved over the recent years, pointing towards the resilience of India's external sector. Next is Monetary Management and Financial Intermediation. Economic Survey 2021-22 notes that the liquidity in the system remained in surplus. Repo rate was maintained at 4% in 2021-22. RBI undertook various measures such as GSEC acquisition program and special long-term repo operations to provide further liquidity. The economic shock of the pandemic has been weathered well by the commercial banking system. Year-on-year bank credit growth accelerated gradually in 2021-22 from 5.3% in April 2021 to 9.2% as of 31st December 2021. The gross non-performing advances ratio of scheduled commercial banks declined from 11.2% at the end of 2017-18 to 6.9% at the end of September 2021. Net non-performing advances ratio declined from 6% to 2.2% during the same period. This figure shows that the capital adequacy ratio has continued to improve since 2015 to 16. Capital to risk-weighted asset ratio of scheduled commercial banks continued to increase from 13% in 2013-14 to 16.54% at the end of September 2021. The return on assets and return on equity for public sector banks continued to be positive for the period ending September 2021. Financial transactions have been showing high growth over the last few years with multiple avenues for making digital payments which are growing over time. Unified Payments Interface or UPI is currently the single largest retail payment system in the country in terms of volume of transactions, indicating its wide acceptance. These figures show the current trends in UPI payments and number of banks in UPI. Next is prices and inflation. The average headline CPI combined inflation moderated to 5.2% in 2021-22 April to December from 6.6% in the corresponding period of 2020-21. The decline in retail inflation was led by the easing of food inflation. Food inflation averaged at a low of 2.9% in April to December 2021-22 as against 9.1% in the corresponding period last year. Effective supply-side management kept prices of most essential commodities under control during the year. Proactive measures were taken to contain the price rise in pulses and edible oils. Reduction in central excise and subsequent cuts in value-added tax by most states helped ease petrol and diesel prices. Wholesale inflation based on wholesale price index rose to 12.5% during 2021-22. This has been attributed to low base in the previous year, pickup in economic activity, a sharp increase in international prices of crude oil and other imported inputs, and high freight cost. Coming to the divergence between CPI combined and WPI inflation. The divergence peaked to 9.6% points in May 2020. However, this year, there was a reversal in divergence with retail inflation falling below wholesale inflation by 8% points in December 2021. This divergence can be explained by factors such as variations due to base effect, the difference in scope and coverage of the two indices, price collections, items covered, the difference in commodity weights, and WPI is more sensitive to cost push inflation led by imported inputs. With the gradual waning of the base effect in WPI, the divergence in CPI combined and WPI is also expected to narrow down. Next is sustainable development and climate change. India's overall score on the Niti Aayog SDG India Index and Dashboard improved to 66 in 2020-21 from 60 in 2019-20 and 57 in 2018-19. This figure depicts the evolution of the Niti Aayog SDG India's index since its first baseline report in 2018. The 2018 baseline assessment is not strictly comparable with later assessment due to its lower coverage of targets and indicators. These figures show the performance of states and union territories on the Niti Aayog SDG India Index in 2019 and 20. The number of front runners scoring 65 to 99 points increased to 22 states and union territories in 2020-21 from 10 in 2019 to 20. In Northeast India, 64 districts were front runners and 39 districts were performers in the Niti Aayog Northeastern Region District SDG Index 2021-22. This figure shows the performance of states on the Niti Aayog SDG India Index 2020-21. Coming to the forest area, India has the 10th largest forest area in the world. The graph given here shows top 10 countries by forest area in 2020. In the year 2020, India ranked third globally in increasing its forest area during 2010 to 2020. In 2020, the forest covered 24% of India's total geographical area, accounting for 2% of the world's total forest area. This figure shows the forest cover of India in 2011 and 2021. Here we can see an increase in very dense forest, open forest and total forest cover during this period. This figure shows the top 5 states in India by forest cover in the year 2021. Madhya Pradesh has the maximum forest cover, followed by Arunachal Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha and Maharashtra. This graph shows top 5 states by percent of states' geographical area under forest cover in the year 2021. Mizoram has 84.53% of its total geographical area under forest cover, whereas Arunachal Pradesh has 79.33% of its total geographical area under forest cover. Next is pollution reduction. The Plastic Waste Management Amendment Rules 2021 was notified in August 2021, which is aimed at phasing out single-use plastics by 2022. Draft regulation on extended producer responsibility for plastic packaging was notified. The compliance status of grossly polluting industries or GPIs located in the Ganga main stem and its tributaries improved from 39% in 2017 to 81% in 2020. The consequent reduction in effluent discharge has been from 349.13 million liters per day or MLD in 2017 to 280.2 million liters per day in 2020. The Prime Minister, as a part of the national statement delivered at the 26th Conference of Parties in Glasgow in November 2021, announced ambitious targets to be achieved by 2030 to enable further reduction in emissions. The need to start one-word movement, Life for Environment, urging mindful and deliberate utilization instead of mindless and destructive consumption was underlined. Next is agriculture and food management. Agriculture sector experienced buoyant growth in the past 2 years, accounting for a sizable 18.8% in 2021-22 in gross value added of the country, registering a growth of 3.6% in 2020-21 and 3.9% in 2021-22. Minimum support price policy is being used to promote crop diversification. Net receipts from crop production have increased by 22.6% in the latest Situation Assessment Survey compared to the Situation Assessment Survey report of 2014. This figure shows the percentage share of gross value added of agriculture and elite sector to total GVA at current prices. As per first advance estimates of national income 2021-22, agriculture and elite sector contribute to 18.8% of total gross value added. This figure shows the growth of GVA of agriculture and elite sector at 2011-12 prices. In this figure, it is observed that livestock and fisheries have been experiencing buoyant growth and has helped the sector perform well. Elite sectors including animal husbandry, dairying and fisheries are steadily emerging to be high growth sectors and major drivers of overall growth in agricultural sector. Government facilitates food processing through various measures of infrastructure development, subsidized transportation and support for formalization of micro food enterprises. India runs one of the largest food management programs in the world. Government has further extended the coverage of food security network through schemes like Prime Minister Garib Kalyan Yojana. Next is industry and infrastructure. The gross value addition at constant prices in the industrial sector grew at the compound annual growth rate of 4.53% between 2011-12 and 2019-20, while total GVA grew by compound annual growth rate of 5.6% over the same period. This figure shows the share of industry and its components in GVA during 2011-12 to first advanced estimates of 2021-22. This table shows the growth in gross value added in different subsectors of industry. Index of industrial production grew at 17.4% year-on-year during April to November 2021 as compared to minus 15.3% in April to November 2020. Capital expenditure for Indian Railways has increased to Rs 1.5 lakh crores in 2020-21 from an average annual cost of Rs 45,980 crores during 2009-14. It has been budgeted to further increase Rs 2.1 lakh crores in 2021-22, a 5 times increase in comparison to the 2014 level. Extent of road construction per day increased substantially in 2020-21 to 36.5 km per day from 28 km per day in 2019-20, which shows a rise of 30.4%. Net profit to sales ratio of large corporates reached an all-time high of 10.6% in the July to September quarter of 2021-22 despite the pandemic, as per the RBI study. Introduction of production-linked incentive scheme provided a major boost to infrastructure, both physical as well as digital. There were measures to reduce transaction cost and improve ease of doing business. All these measures would support the pace of recovery. Coming to the performance of service sector, the service sector contracted by 1.4% year-on-year in 2020-21. GVA of services crossed pre-pandemic level in July to September quarter of 2021-22. However, GVA of contact-intensive sectors like trade, transport, etc. still remain below pre-pandemic level. Overall service sector GVA is expected to grow by 8.2% in 2021-22. During the first half of 2021-22, service sector received over $16.7 billion FDI, accounting for almost 54% of total FDI inflows into India. IT BPM services revenue reached $194 billion in 2020-21, adding 1.38 lakh employees during the same period. Major government reforms in this regard include removing telecom regulations in IT BPO sector and opening up of space sector to private players. India has become third largest startup ecosystem in the world after US and China. Number of new recognized startups increased to over 14,000 in 2021-22 from 733 in 2016-17. 44 Indian startups have achieved unicorn status in 2021, taking overall tally of unicorns to 83, most of which are in service sector. Next is social infrastructure and employment. 157.94 crore doses of COVID-19 vaccines administered as on 16 January 2022, which constitute 91.39 crores first dose and 66.05 crore second dose. This figure shows weekly COVID-19 vaccine doses by age in India. Here, it is seen that vaccination speed increased significantly once the population between ages 18 to 45 years was permitted. With the revival of the economy, employment indicators bounced back to pre-pandemic levels during the last quarter of 2020-21. As per the quarterly periodic labor force survey data, up to March 2021, employment in the urban sector affected by pandemic has recovered almost to the pre-pandemic level. According to Employees Provident Fund Organization data, formalization of jobs continued during the second COVID wave. The adverse impact of COVID on the formalization of jobs was much lower than during the first COVID wave. Expenditure on social services, including health, education and others, by centre and states as a proportion of GDP increased from 6.2% in 2014-15 to 8.6% in 2021-22 as per the budget estimates. India has made significant progress in improving its health outcomes over the last 2 decades by eliminating polio, guinea worm disease, yaws and maternal and neonatal tetanus. As per National Family Health Survey 5, total fertility rate came down to 2 in 2019-21 from 2.2 in 2015-16. Sex ratio, infant mortality rate, under 5 mortality rate and institutional births have improved in 2019-21 over the year 2015-16. All child nutrition indicators have improved at all India level. Not only services are reaching to the public, but the intended outcomes have also improved. Coming to drinking water and sanitation, Jal Jeevan Mission, which is rolled out in August 2019, envisioned to provide adequate safe drinking water through individual household tap connections to all households in rural India by 2024. The mission will benefit more than 19 crore rural families, bridge rural-urban divide, improve quality of life, enhance ease of living and public health. Under this mission, 83 districts have become Har Ghar Jal districts. Increased allotment of funds to Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme to provide a buffer for unorganized labor in rural areas during the pandemic.
That's about the Economic Survey 2021-22. We have discussed almost all the points in the Economic Survey that a UPSC aspirant need to know. If you like this video, please comment, subscribe our channel and support us. Thank you.